and its implication into public health. So genetics in low-middle-income countries, as you can see on this map, is fairly difficult. There are, as in any population, 5 to 8% of the population affected with rare genetic disorders. And if you look at the distribution of newborns, then you see that in low-middle-income countries, actually the biggest proportion or the biggest numbers of affected individuals can be found. So there are very few clinicians in exactly these countries, and that leads to the need of, or that leads to very few genetic diagnoses being made. So there's a huge need for scaling up genetic diagnosis, especially when you look at the human genetic, the WHO and the RCD aim to provide a human with a genetic disorder suspected with a diagnosis within a year. So, especially if you look at the expenditure on health per capita, it's just a comparison between Germany, the world, South Africa, Egypt, and Nigeria, then you see there's a huge gap between developed countries and low-middle-income countries. So the biggest question is how to provide genetic diagnosis with limited resources. And once we can achieve this, then actually in the future the main goal would be that a lot of diseases could be potentially be treated with novel technologies and novel clinical trials that are ongoing right now. So, as said, genetic disorders affect 5 to 8% of the given population. Usually, the affected individuals have specific clinical features that can be described by HPO terms, and almost 50% of the genetic disorders manifest in the face with a special facial characteristic gestalt. So they're recognizable, and a lot of disorders are associated with the family history, so taking parents into account is always very important, and that facilitates diagnosis. So the genetic diagnosis of genetic disorders is mainly now used whole exome sequencing, and it's because it's standardized, it's fairly cheap. It can now be reduced to up to $250 per trial, and it's fairly fast. Using HPO terms, you can describe phenotypic features. They're standardized, they're universal, they're computable. Another thing that is computable and standardized and fairly cheap and fast to achieve are images from patients, especially facial images nowadays with mobile phones and smartphones, being easy to get images. And as mentioned before, trial and family-wide analysis really helps and boosts increase the precision and the diagnostic field. So, as mentioned by Peter Kravitz in the previous talks, we have developed the prioritization of exome data by image analysis study, the PEDIA study. It basically consists of 3 parts. We select patients, a photograph is done, a blood sample is drawn, and symptoms are being annotated in HPO terms. This data was sent to FaceGene or now to other platforms, and basically we apply a support vector machine to calculate one final PEDIA score out of 3 data resources. And this is the phenotypic features with the HPO terms. It's the Gestalt score from the face, and it's the CAT score from the genetic data. Ultimately, the PEDIA classifier that calculates the PEDIA score per gene can then rank the disease-causing gene and prioritize the results fairly fast and easy to interpret for the clinician. And then in the case can be molecularly diagnosed. So in PEDIA, we have published this work now in several journals, and have moved on to PEDIA 2.0, where we have replaced FaceGene's algorithm with our own platform called Gestalt. If you want to have a look at the web page, you may scan the QR code. So Gestaltmatcher is an open source platform where you can upload your patients, you can manage them, and you can upload facial image, annotate HPO terms, and then basically they are ready to go through the PEDIA platform. So the goal of this PEDIA study in low and middle income countries was basically proof of concept on facial analysis in diverse ethnic populations. We wanted to increase the diagnostic yield in these countries by selecting patients we can actually diagnose. And then we wanted to see whether what will be the impact on the public health of the society. So we collaborated with Professor Ekanem from Nigeria, Lagos. She shared 9 cases with us, and where she obtained facial images and consent to present them. And we performed whole exome trial sequencing. The inclusion criteria of these patients were a characteristic facial gestalt and developmental delay. So we have a highly biased inclusion criteria, but this was intended. The same we did with a collaborator, Professor Ebtesam Abdallah from the Alexandria University in Egypt. She shared with us 34 cases that had all characteristic facial gestalt with developmental delay or multiple congenital anomalies or skeletal dysplasia syndromes, where also parents and family history was available, and in some cases multiple affected children were available in the same family. So we had again a highly biased inclusion criteria for diagnosing these patients. So we ran the PEDIA pipeline on them, which is almost fully automatized by now. And from the 9 cases from Nigeria, we were able to solve 6 molecularly, 1 was clinically diagnosed, and 2 remain undiagnosed. So the overall diagnostic yield was 67%. From Egypt, we were able to solve 59% of the cases, which are 20 in total. We have 3 candidates, of which 1 is a novel disease gene, and 2 individuals remain inconclusive, and 11 samples remain unsolved. So just to come back to the single cohorts, just wanted to show the performance of PEDIA for the Nigerian cases was extremely good. And we were really surprised by the super nice performance that PEDIA basically ranked the disease-causing gene on place 1 in 4 of the 6 cases. And the 2 cases was not applicable. There was 1 Turner syndrome and golden Pass syndrome, for which the gene is not known. So we were wondering whether this would happen also in the Egyptian cohort, and from the 20 solved cases, PEDIA ranked the disease-causing gene on top 1 in 10 cases. In 8 cases it was between 1 and 10, and only in 2 cases it was ranked between the top 100 cases. So this is a slide from the Gestaltmanager paper where we show that the diagnostic yield, or the ranking of the disease-causing gene in 50% of the cases is on position number 1. And this data is actually from a paper on European faces, or not particularly biased on ethnically diverse faces. But here basically in our study, here LIMC study, we basically show that this works also with ethnically diverse individuals. So one take-home message would be that PEDIA allows an accurate and fast diagnosis for cases with facial characteristics, recognizable clinical features, and this is regardless of the ethnic background. And this basically means that clinicians and pediatricians can now suspect rare genetic disorders by automated facial analysis and automated phenotyping. So you can increase the diagnostic potential by taking a picture from your patient. And then automated facial analysis can be utilized a priori to increase the diagnostic yield. And that's exactly where we think this might help to achieve the goals of the RDRC 2027 goal, that all patients coming to a medical attention with a suspected rare disease will be diagnosed within 1 year if their disorder is known to the medical literature. So eventually we were interested whether our work has a beneficial or malicious impact on public health and the society. So from Adriana Zon and I, published in 2021 in Genetics Medicine, we know that genetic diagnosis and genetic counseling has a tendency of being directed. It is associated to psychological consequences, anxiety, stress for the parents. It may impact on social status, provide stigmata to families. It could put family values at the end at risk, or affect the financial status, beneficial, also in a negative way. It may conflict with religious or cultural beliefs, and eventually the result from Adriana was that the acceptance of genetic diagnosis and genetic counseling is higher in individuals with a higher educational level and socioeconomic status. So we were wondering whether our work has actually a beneficial or malefficient effect. And because the cohort size of our pilot study is way too low, I cannot show you any results yet, but I would like any human geneticist and genetic counselor that is participating in this conference to maybe scan this QR code so you can participate in a questionnaire for participants of any of your genetic studies and programs, and fill this out together with your patient to really see and understand whether the patients benefit from genetic counseling and genetic testing. So these are around 30 questions for the patients and the genetic counselor, and I will provide the results upon request. And I'll just briefly go through the future aims that we're working on. This is fully automatized integration of the processing in PEDIA 3.0. We want to do automatic clinical reporting and also report the clinician what we see in the face and what types of HPO types are hidden in the face, so that even there is less expertise needed to provide information for PEDIA. Also, Gestaltmanager is able to do patient matching and figure out who's the next similar patient. So feel free to ask me any questions after the talk, and for this I would like to thank mainly the patients and their families for their participation in our study. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexei. We have time for one questions or comments. I have one comment. This is obviously not only important for MRIC countries, but for everyone. I would say. I just to get a sense what proportion of these 6,000 or so disorders we now know on the basis of these would be included.
Yeah, so currently Gestaltmanager supports around 800 diseases, and the more people participate in this platform, I think the more it will grow and the faster it can diagnose rare and ultra-rare disorders.
That's great. Then we have the end there is one question.
Hi. Is that working?
It is working.
That was very nice, thank you. I'd like to get a better sense of for what fraction of patients the HPO matching helps, or the facial approach helps above the genetics. You showed some AUC curves that demonstrated the increased with the diagnostic rate by using one approach. I don't know anything about how those patients were chosen, I guess. Just because I work on the Design Development Disorders Project, which is 30,000 patients in the UK, and we tend to rely on the genetic approach, and in general we found that the HPO match doesn't help us very much. So I'm just interested in what you see, kind of quantify that a bit better.
If I can summarize the question, I'm not really sure whether I understood correctly. How much the face contributes to genetic diagnosis?
Yes.
Well, then, in almost 50% of the rare genetic disorders, the facial appearance is characteristic for the disease. And in many cases that I experience is that you end up with several variants of unknown clinical significance. But when you then analyze the faces, you can identify similarities between patients that are present in the database, and you can see this, and you have an objective score which you can use in order to rank the variant of unknown clinical significance with the PP4 criteria from ICMG to likely pathogenic. And then it's more easier to have an additional layer of information besides the clinical and phenotypic features, but also the facial feature to really determine whether this is a disease-causing gene.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alexei, again. And we will move on to our